For watching my Module 2 experiment on misconceptions that students may have. I chose the idea of objects sinking or floating and some of the misconceptions that students have with that science concept. So again, students often, and I've heard this firsthand with experience, students often think that smaller, lighter objects float in water and larger, heavier objects sink in water. So I would do the demonstration. I have a jar here, and I'm going to enlarge my screen so you can see. I have a jar of water here that I would have, and I picked an object like a thumbtack and an object like a K-cup, okay, so that the students could see a smaller and a larger object. So I would raise a lot of questioning, a lot of discussions. I would have the students actually hold these two things in their hands. I would have them say, which one feels heavier? Which one do we think is going to sink versus which one do we think is going to float? Why do we think that? And often, again, I'm going to hear that this object is smaller, so this is going to indeed float, and this object is larger, so we're going to sink. So I would actually have the students test this out to clear up some of that misconception. And you can see that when my thumbtack is dropped in, it actually sank. And so I looked to the students' reactions to see kind of what questions they were asking and things of that sort. And then I would drop in the K cup and make note that this is the larger item. So why is it floating? And it would then indeed lead into the scientific explanation about density. And I think it would be really powerful to do this lesson with my students, especially students in special education, because density is something that applies across the board to a lot of things. So density, we would get into this discussion about how density is all about how tightly packed together particles are in an object and how it's based on size, mass, arrangements of atoms. And I would pull out this K cup and I would talk about how, well, this object floated because it was less dense than the water it was in. So the particles were not as packed tightly together as they were in the thumbtack. And even though in this tiny thumbtack it's smaller, the articles are tightly packed together, making it more dense than the water, therefore why it sank. And I think it would be really important, again, for my students, especially in special education, to go over this concept because this is a lot of times I get the question too, well, why does a ship not sink? So I would lead in with this density experiment first, and then I would lead into other science experiments like buoyancy and talk about the upward and downward push of water. So this would be my introductory lesson, but I think this is really important misconception to clear up for students, especially before leading into other concepts. I did tag an additional video on the bottom here that I thought was super effective in helping students learn this concept. And I also provided here a copy of the demonstration explanation that I would use. Again, I would use this for elementary school age students, and yeah, I think it would be really awesome for them to see and explore in an easy way. You could also use other objects such as paper clips. I have a lid, again, showing students the difference in sizes and to see what their predictions would be. Thanks for listening.